Hey, AP Euro boys, another review day. Oh, something going off on my watch here. I don't even know if you're watching these anymore. I'm getting a lot of senioritis. I'm not gonna lie. I feel unwanted based on what I've been doing in terms of looking at people doing projects and doing assignments that I've put out there. A lot of people are treating assignments as if they are suggestions. I get it, man. You guys are seniors. You had COVID-19 for the last 2 months of your senior year. And by no means do I harbor any ill will. Do get that practice test done, because that's kind of your final exam, and I just want to be able to give you all a perfect grade on that. So, whatever. Anyway, here, look, man, here's some review stuff. This is some of the stuff. I'm just going to touch on things again. These are for going out for a walk with the dog and listening to stuff just to put it into your head. So we left off at Elizabeth I, 1559. The Act of Supremacy had passed Parliament, repeals all the anti-Protestant legislation of Mary Tudor's reign. And Elizabeth is the supreme governess. You have Thomas Cranmer's, same date, 1559, you have the Act of Uniformity, which revises Cranmer's Book of Common Prayer. So essentially what Elizabeth is doing is making sure that moderate Protestantism, and the key is moderate, because remember, Elizabeth doesn't like extremes. She's not a fan of Catholicism, and she's also not a fan of the various Protestant organizations popping up, namely the Presbyterians. Remember our boy John Knox with the what was his book, the first blast of the trumpet of the horrible regiment of women. That might not be exactly it, but it's close. And he was the leader of the Presbyterians, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Presbyterians were sort of Calvinists, Scottish Calvinists. Let's see, 39 articles. Moderate Protestantism will be in England. She will balance the Church of England against the Roman Catholics and the more extreme Puritans and Presbyterians. But remember that the Puritans, they are unhappy about the fact that there's a lot of different Catholic rituals within the Church of England. The ceremony, the gear or vestments, it's that they remember Puritan churches are going to become really sort of, I don't want to say plain, because I'm sure that someone would be upset with that, but they become very simple. And the Church of England kind of maintains a lot of that Catholicism. Also, remember, Henry VIII wasn't eager. He didn't want to break from Catholicism. He was good with Catholicism. He just wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon. And remember that his brother had been married to Catherine of Aragon, and the fact that she had had so many miscarriages of boys freaked him out. So he's not as evil or stuff. It's not that it was all. I mean, look, man, this was not superstitious age, but an age where, like, you could get freaked out by that. Like, he thought, okay, well, my brother was married to her, and maybe this is whatever. I'm trying to give him some benefit of the doubt. Spain has won the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. Where they beat the Ottomans. They're very dangerous. The English, as I mentioned before, are financing Protestant revolts. They're helping to finance. They helped to finance the French Protestants, Coligny and Condé, and they are helping the sea beggars. So you got that. You got Mary Queen of Scots, who gets executed in the Babington plot. And remember, you have the Globe Theater and Shakespeare. Remember our boy Sir Francis Drake, because he's just one of the badasses of history. He will fight the Spanish, and he'll actually take the fight. He'll attack the Spanish at Cadiz and win and beat up on their armada. And then, as you know, the Spanish will move the armada into the English Channel, and the Holy Wind, or come on, what's the wind? Whatever. The English wind will beat them up pretty badly. But my favorite part of Drake is that he's a pirate, as are the sea beggars, and they're all he's attacking Spanish ships, stealing their bullion and their gold bullion, and then using that to fight the Spanish. And all at the same time as they're supposedly negotiating with the Spanish. Let's see if I can keep moving with this. 30 Years' War. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because it was a BBQ last year. As you know, the Peace of Augsburg in 1555 had given a lot of, had made it so the person in charge kind of got to choose his particular religion. Remember that Germany is extremely fragmented. There will be a war. There is a lot of religious division. There is a Bohemian period, and in this particular period, the Protestants will get throttled. Remember because it was Ferdinand the Second, I believe, that is like, yeah, no, the Peace of Augsburg, none of that holds true, and he sends some of his envoys to Prague, where we have the defenestration of Prague, where they throw the Ferdinand's envoys out the window. That begins the Bohemian period. Ferdinand's army is led by Tilly, and he will destroy Frederick V's troops at the Battle of White Mountain in 1620. The 30 Years' War goes from 1618 to 1648. Then you have a Danish period. This is going to be where Christian IV comes in. And in the Danish period, this is where Ferdinand will hire a Protestant to lead the Catholic army. That is one of my favorite characters in history, Albrecht Wallenstein. There's the great series by Schiller about Wallenstein. Wallenstein is like Patton. He's real into astrology, like Nancy Reagan into astrology, and every one of his battle plans revolves around the stars, and he wins all of them. That's what's cool. I wish I had time to go through all that, but Wallenstein crushes the Protestants in the Danish phase, and you get the Edict of Restitution in 1629, which it makes Calvinism totally illegal, which isn't going to work. And all church lands the Lutherans had acquired since 1522 or 1552 go back to the Catholics. Then we get Gustavus Adolphus and the Swedish period, and he's brilliant and does an incredible job, but Wallenstein's forces, despite getting kind of throttled by Adolphus, as I remember, will get, Adolphus dies, and then it's pretty much over. Then you have a Swedish-French period. Now, here's the key to understanding 30 Years' War. The key to understanding this, it looks like it's about religion, but it's not about religion. There's a Swedish-French period. The French will support the Protestants because they don't like the prospect of the Catholic Spain getting too powerful. So what happens, this is a really ugly period. And by the way, this is all masterminded, I believe, by Richelieu and Mazarin. So they're Catholics, they're hardcore Catholics. And what they do is they decide to support Protestants against Catholic Spain. So this is where the war kind of is, we kind of laugh at it as it's not religious. This is a political war. But man, there's a great reading about the destruction of Magdeburg in 1631. And it's just, guys, there's very few books about this, the effect on the people of these German regions. And it is an ugly war, 30 years of just carnage. And occupying troops, many of which are mercenaries, occupying towns and just doing whatever they want. Let's see, Treaty of Westphalia is really important. 1648, we end the war, and it kind of goes back to that whole piece of Augsburg idea, that the German princes are supreme over their principalities. That's meaning they can choose their religion. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm trying to move faster because I don't even know if you guys are watching this stuff anymore. But this is stuff for walking the dog, and you can just kind of hear this stuff. So you had a Bohemian phase, you had a Danish phase, you had a Swedish phase with Gustavus Adolphus, and then you had the French-Swedish phase. Big names of the 30 Years' War are Wallenstein, who is a Protestant leader of Ferdinand's troops. Ferdinand will actually have him killed because he's getting too powerful. And then, Christian IV, the Danish king, will, all these guys are pretty successful as Protestant leaders against Catholics, but the Catholics just kind of end up winning most of the particular battles, largely because of a Protestant leader of the Catholic forces. The Netherlands, Golden Age to decline. Man, look, the Dutch are the leading merchant shipping country in the world. I don't even know what I just said there. They had good, cheap grain, so their farmers were good. By the way, the tulip bulbs are very important. They just had this incredible seaborne empire. Dutch traders are everywhere. Spice producing areas of Java and Sri Lanka, and this is the Dutch East India Company, which was chartered in 1602. They really dominate that spice trade. Okay? Let's see, but the decline after the death of William III of Britain in 1702, remember William and Mary, the provinces prevented the emergence of another strong stateholder. The Dutch pretty much kind of sowed their own demise. And the main reason for the Dutch decline economically is other navies are becoming just as significant in terms of merchant trade as the Dutch. That's really it. But it's an important country because of the fact that it was incredibly prosperous. They still were. It's just when they say decline, that's a bit harsh. They just weren't the freaking gold standard anymore. I might be biased because I'm Dutch. Let's see. Oh, now we get into James I, the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, will take over after Elizabeth dies. He inherits a massive debt, and he doesn't want to call Parliament, because if you call Parliament, they have power. This is going to be sort of a theme. He levies all kinds of new taxes, which are called impositions, and he is slowly building up a lot of hatred. He also is running into a big problem known as the Puritans. The Puritans are a thorn in his side. They were a thorn in Elizabeth's side. And he is constantly going at them. He's also alleged to have been having an affair with the Duke of Buckingham. And he signs a peace treaty with Spain in 1604. So you can see that there's a lot of, and by the way, the peace treaty with Spain's a great idea. But again, it looks like, what are you doing? You're going against everything we believe. He's the guy, James I is the guy who kind of gets the Puritans to move to Holland, because he's kind of persecuting Puritans, and then they will eventually come over here. Now, unfortunately, that debt is going to follow into Charles I's reign. He takes the helm in 1625, and he is in massive debt. Remember, but just to go back, James I, remember he makes the Puritans have recreation time on Sundays. He's kind of a jerk to the Puritans. Charles I takes over, and he has nothing but problems because he inherits a massive amount of debt. And he's almost able to rule without Parliament, but he has to go to war with Scotland, so he has to call Parliament together in order to get the funds. And so we're going to have the Long Parliament, okay? And let me read something to you. The House of Commons impeaches both Stafford and Laud once they are called, which are Charles I's two main advisors. They are both executed. So Charles I has to give two people to be executed. Parliament abolished the courts that had enforced the royal policy and prohibited the levying of new taxes. Okay? Parliament resolved that no more than 3 years can elapse between meetings, and the king could not dissolve Parliament. In 1641, Parliament is asked to raise funds for an army to suppress the rebellion in Scotland, and there's a couple things that happen here. Parliament starts to enact legislation which would which would threaten all of Charles' ability to levy any kind of punishment on Parliament, and so he invades Parliament. When he invades Parliament looking for the guys who have been the rabble-rousers. They all escape, and what happens is Parliament passes the Militia Ordinance of 1642, which pretty much says we have our own military now. And this is going to be your Civil War. You know, Cromwell's going to be put in charge of the new model army. They will be nicknamed the Roundheads because of their haircuts, and they will fight Charles I's Cavaliers. Remember, the Virginia Cavaliers have a picture of Charles I or a Cavalier on their helmet, so this will end in 1649 when Charles is executed, at which point Cromwell for the next 11 years will have a military dictatorship, and he passes something called the Clarendon Code. There are no official offices allowed for non-Anglicans, and you kind of have to be a Puritan. England becomes a non-party state at this point under Cromwell. It is a military dictatorship, Puritan dictatorship under Cromwell. Not a lot of partying. Now, Charles II is over in France partying. There's a good movie, and I've mentioned it before with Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr., and it's called Restoration. It is a rated R movie, just an FYI, but it's a really cool take on the Restoration. And Charles II will come in the Restoration, at that point, the English will screw over the Dutch in 1670. Because Charles II is broke. And remember, he promises Louis XIV, who is the absolutist, the Sun King. He has been put in, Mazarin and Richelieu have created this absolutist monarchy for Louis XIII in France. They were involved in the 30 Years' War on the other team. Richelieu and Mazarin are just these guys who are the ultimate political / religious manipulators. They're awesome. Love these guys. But the French give Charles II tons of money as long as he's willing to convert on his deathbed. And he actually does convert on his deathbed. Is anything else? Let's see. This is Titus Oates and his popish plot. Titus Oates is this buffoon, he has failed at almost everything. He's accused, if I remember, I read something about this, he's accused, some of his every time he got a bad grade, he accused his teacher of, sexual harassment and stuff like that. He's a total flunky. And he ends up getting a bunch of, this is when James takes over. I think it's James. Is it James? No, it's still Charles. And he gets a bunch of Charles's, diplomats executed for being part of a plot, a Catholic plot. And it's just worth mentioning. Whatever, the popish plot, Titus Oates. For the record, again, Charles has been using that Louis XIV's money. And remember, Louis XIV is a hardcore Catholic. Charles has been using his money to avoid calling Parliament. So there's a lot of animosity towards Charles. And so that's going to, again, remember James the First gets his son Charles the First's head cut off by screwing over Parliament. Well, Charles the Second is going to screw over James the Second by the financial, whatever it is, aligning with Catholic France. Anyway, there's a glorious revolution in which James II just has to flee England. He only lasts for 3 years, 1685 to 1688. James II lasts. He has to leave. He has to get out of there. It's the glorious revolution. It's where William and Mary take the throne. This is the glorious revolution. And remember, William's not willing to take the throne unless he is made actual king of England. He is, but he is the last of the Dutch successors. He has to agree to that. He is actually invited by Parliament to invade, and he does, and there's not even a shot fired. He also, when he and Mary take over, they have to sign the Bill of Rights, which is I forget what year that was, but they sign a Bill of Rights in like 1689, which gives Parliament a lot more power. In 1701, this is important. You will have the Act of Settlement, which creates the Hanoverian succession to the English throne. 1701 Act of Settlement, which they're still on, Hanoverians. I got to get moving with this, man. Come on. Let's see. So, yeah, King George will get the throne in the Act, George I in the Act of Settlement. Very important here is this age of Walpole. He's a brilliant financial mind, and he is a remarkable politician. Let's see. He's able to handle the House of Commons. Let's see. And he gets England's trade all over the world. The colonies are a big part with Walpole. India, where else? Walpole turns England into the power that we will know it as. Louis XIV, as I mentioned, has taken over in France. Most important part of Versailles, but the Fronde. And this is a revolt against the French monarchy that is kind of led by the nobility. And that's going to play a role into why, he's going to blame the Jansenists, which are a Catholic offshoot, for the Fronde. So he's going to kill thousands of Jansenists. He's also going to build Versailles. And that's going to largely be because of the Fronde, because he wants to have his nobility where he can watch where he can watch them. He uses councils to govern. That's a good call. Judicial bodies called parliaments he uses. And he uses them well, because Paris is very difficult to control. And Louis XIV uses these parliaments well, and he uses them particularly in Paris extremely well. He builds Versailles. He is the Sun King. For every test for 1,000,000 years, he was on a coin with sun around him, whatever. He's the king by divine right. He builds Versailles. Let's see. He is, this is where we get, he has the War of Devolution, in which he thinks his first wife, Maria Theresa, should inherit Spanish Netherlands. He suppresses the Jansenists because he blamed them largely for the Fronde. in Aix-la-Chapelle, his Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle in 1668, he does get the border areas of France and Holland, but he doesn't get the throne, but he does invade Netherlands, and that's going to be, the French are going to be constantly going into the Netherlands. I mentioned before, 1670, he gets the Treaty of Dover, in which Charles II of England, who he is pretty much bought, helps the French fight the Dutch. Let's see, and 1700, 16 Jansenism, the big one is going to be, he is the revocation of the Edict of Nantes. Remember, Henry of Navarre / Henry IV has passed this Edict of Nantes, which created peace between the religions in France. He is going to revoke the Edict of Nantes, and what's going to happen is he's going to have a flight of wealth out of France. It was a terrible call, because highly skilled, wealthy people leave France. And we have the League of Augsburg and 9 Years' War, and it's going, that'll end with, you're not going to have to understand that. Spanish succession. The only thing really big about Spanish succession is like the English getting Gibraltar at the Treaty of Utrecht. Flintlock rifles is important. Let's see. England, Holland, and the Holy Roman Empire form a grand alliance. This is War of Spanish Succession to preserve the balance of power, securing Flanders as a neutral barrier between Holland and France. And let's see, Louis goes to war. He goes to war poorly equipped here. France will make peace with England at Utrecht in 1713. And with Holland and the Emperor at Rastatt in 1714. Philip V remains King of Spain, but England gets Gibraltar and the island of Minorca. I don't know what else here. Well, whatever. I can't be slowing down like that. Well, Louis XV takes over, and the one funny thing about Louis XV is the whole John Law. I believe he was the Scottish gambler and the Mississippi bubble. He was selling shares of the Mississippi Company, and he bankrupts France. That's what the Mississippi bubble does. Oh, I'm at 33 minutes. All right, so I will cut off our review right here. Oh, look, I can see that we're getting to Poland's Liberum Veto. Poor Poland. Anyway, guys, I hope go take a 35-minute walk with your dog and listen to some of this just to put it in your head. So while you're reviewing, that's why I'm here for you guys.